Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Our guests waiting to be profiled are ventriloquist Jay Johnson and actor Kenneth Alan Williams. Ventriloquist, writer, comic, cartoonist, poet, and puppeteer Jay Johnson was born and raised in Texas. In high school, he produced his own TV show with a local sponsor, and during the summers, he performed in theme parks. Your career really started early. You were 11 years old.
Well, yeah, a career at 11 means you got paid to do a birthday party, you know, but...
that was pretty good.
I think that's it.
How did that happen?
I think the first show that I got paid for was a Lions Club ladies' night banquet. So, and I didn't know I was getting paid. After the show, a man came up and shook hands with him and said, "A great show," and I thought he had a napkin in his hand, and it turned out to be a $10 bill. So.
And how old were you then?
I was almost 11. I wasn't quite 11.
But then, were you doing ventriloquist
Yes,
work?
I was.
You were?
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen? Because that's a bizarre story.
Well, I guess it's a kind of an unusual art form, but I always had a fascination for it. I was actually doing voices and kind of talking to imaginary people when I was really young. So, so by the time I was 11, I had actually put that together in an act. I guess it was either put me in a home or send me to the stage. So.
Oh, that's it. And then you brought to life one of your cousin's dolls?
Yes, yes.
How'd you do that?
Well, it was just, I had been performing with or practicing with a lot of handmade puppets and puppets that my mom made and that we could find.
Oh, you
were. But I really didn't have what I thought was a ventriloquist partner, which was Jerry Mahoney at the time. You know
Oh, so that was an inspiration for you?
Sure. And he put out, Paul put out a line that were actually quite good of dolls that had moving mouths and a stick, very much like a professional figure.
Well, what's the difference between being a puppeteer? Your mother was helping you make puppets. Were you using those puppets?
Sure. Well, there's really no difference in puppetry performed with a ventriloquist act or puppetry performed someone else, except the ventriloquist is an open-stage puppeteer and then does ventriloquism on top of that.
I see.
So every ventriloquist is really a puppeteer as well, I think.
So when you were doing theme parks in the summer of your high school years, hundreds of performances.
5 a day. We did 5 a day, and then there was another cast that did the other 5, so they had 10 shows a day. And then on one day, to give the other cast a day off, you had to do 8 shows in the day.
So you were a teenager.
Yeah. I guess I started.
Did you travel?
Well, as much as I could in high school. My senior year, I was on a tour for Dr. Pepper, which is a wonderful soft drink, and we went around the country. And I
we
almost.
Loved them, right? They loved you.
They loved me, and I loved them. And so I went around and performed at their bottlers meetings, which was about 3 months of being away from school. Industrial shows, yeah.
I think I gave this long list of things that you do. I think we should add actor, too, because you did a lot of commercials. And you acted. You actually, to me, you're acting on stage.
Well, you know, ventriloquism is a very odd form of acting. It's when you become an actor and a reactor, and you become the dual actor in one person is what I always think of it. So
you came from the East or from Texas,
yeah.
And you came to LA, and right away did you get into TV?
Well, no, not really. Excuse me. It's my voice doesn't wake up till about noon. I think
too.
So. It sleeps in. I always say Bob sleeps in. That's my puppet character. Not right away. I had a manager at the time who was quite a thrust of Hollywood, and he put me at a little place called The Horn out in Santa Monica. So I performed at The Horn for maybe a year or so before Soap came along. So.
And then Soap came along. Tell us a little bit about that, because Soap is very much like the show you're doing right now, Jay Johnson's Two and Only.
Yeah, Jay Johnson's Two and Only is, it talks about how I got Soap and all the stories we had on Soap. But It was a brand new, groundbreaking style of show. It was an evening serial, so every show connected to the next one. And they, for some reason, came up with a character that would be a schizophrenic ventriloquist, and I got to play that part. It was Chuck, and Bob was the character. Yeah,
and how long were you, because everyone recognizes you from that.
Well, that show ran for 4 years, so it was 97 shows, and it's now on DVD and syndicated.
Did Bob look like you?
Not necessarily, no. They all start to look like you after a while.
That's what I wondered. When you, how do you have your, what are we calling him? A doll, a dummy, a puppet?
Wooden American is actually the best. Yeah, wooden American is what they prefer. But the only term I don't like is the word dummy, just because I think that it's from the wrong word. It comes from a root word which means unable to talk, and I think that that's inappropriate for these characters.
But he doesn't speak.
Well, he does on stage. He does on stage, yeah. With my help, but we don't need to tell the secrets.
Do you think that your wooden American is from demons? Is it an abnormal thing? I know you talk about on the stage that it goes back to the 1700s where people think it was very weird for someone to throw their voice, they called it, right?
Yes, there are incidences in the past where ventriloquism has been maligned, but in its history, it was not associated with puppetry, it was not associated with performing, it was associated with the occult arts. Right. So ventriloquism would be not unlike someone channeling a spirit today and doing that sort of thing. Only John Edwards, moves his mouth now today is what he does. So yeah.
But do you think it's a God-given talent?
Well, I do. I think that there's no reason for me to have had that fascination. And I guess every talent is God-given.
Could anyone do it? Could I learn how to do it?
Well, yes. I always say yes, and then I qualify by saying, as much as I could guarantee that you could become a lyrical coloratura in an opera. You have to be born with a certain capacity for the voice. But then more importantly than that, you have to really be able to suspend your belief, which is part acting and part being a child and a lot of things, because you really are giving life to something outside of yourself.
How do you name your doll? I'm going to show this doll because to me it looks just like Jay Johnson.
Well, we do look alike in that picture. That's Bob, and he was the character I met on Soap. So we've been together now for a long time. But so they gave him the name Bob, which is a very difficult word to say for a ventriloquist because it's a B word. And
they gave him the name?
He was scripted as Bob. My characters were Squeaky and Darwin and Amigo. And
where did Squeaky come from? That was a great story.
Squeaky was my first character, and he was originally a Jerry Mahoney ventriloquist doll that we bought at the store. And then I had my own Squeaky carved by my mentor. And Squeaky was a name based upon an old radio show that I was fascinated as a child called Big John and Sparky. And Sparky and Squeaky were very similar names.
But Squeaky, he carved Squeaky, and Squeaky looks like you. But you had only had this relationship with him over the phone.
Now, yes, he never saw me.
It's amazing.
Well, my relationship with Art Sieving was really amazing. And I think doing the show, which is his story and my story put together, the two and only at the Brentwood Theater.
The two and only at the Brentwood, right.
It is really about the magical connection that he and I had. And I think not till I started doing the show did I realize how special and how magical this relationship was with this man. He was amazing.
He taught you how to take care of your doll.
Absolutely.
And how do you take care of it? Because here's all the trunks.
Yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, he was a big stickler about making sure that it was not just you don't think of it as a toy. You don't think of it as anything but an instrument. It is very much like a violin that you would take care of. So it is a personality, and it is someone you're performing with, and you want it to be human, but at the same time, you have to have that balance of it being a very specialized instrument and take care of it.
And you put it in its own box.
Put it in a case. I have to tell you a story. One time I was doing a television show, and Itzhak Perlman was also there. Now, Itzhak Perlman has a violin that was in the Beethoven Orchestra that is hundreds of years old and priceless. And his violin was sitting right next to his chair, and my case with my partner Bob was sitting right next, and somebody came in that was kind of moving furniture around, and almost at the same time he picks up the violin and I pick up the case and we put it in our laps, and we had this moment of, you're looking after your case, I'm looking after my case, we're okay.
We're protecting
our people. Yeah, our axes are safe. Yeah.
When you do your act, and is it called throwing your voice? Some people say that.
Well, that's an old term for it because it sounds as if it's coming from somewhere else. So it sounds like the ventriloquist is taking his voice and putting it somewhere else. But technically, it is the ventriloquist ability to change the amplitude of a sound wave to create the effect as if it has come from some other place. So it really doesn't come from a place, but your ear doesn't know the difference.
So you're looking at something,
Sure.
and your voice is coming
Sure.
out of there, but you're not moving your lips. That's
Well,
part of your training?
But that's part of the illusion to convince your eye. You see, you always have to convince the eye that sound is coming because we humans don't have the best hearing. We don't rely on our hearing to survive. We rely on our eyes more. So you always see things before you hear them. Sight gets there long before the sound, so you're used to looking and then placing the sound.
So when you're doing that, what's harder for you, to sing for your wooden American? I hate
Thank you.
saying
No,
that.
thank you. No, they appreciate it. They appreciate it.
To sing or to, you have so many different kinds of deep voices, loud voices, singing voices. What's the most difficult to project?
Well,
project, is that right?
Yes, that's a good word. I think they're all equally difficult in their own way. A higher voice is harder to maintain. A lower voice is harder to emote. There are certain expressions that if you're trying to get a distant voice, for example, there's a certain placement, and it's really easy to if you're singing, to push out of that placement. So it's a lot of training and just figuring out what you can do and how far you can go.
But do you need to do that when you have an hour-and-a-half show? I mean, you're going to do Broadway. I mean, do you need to change your voice height, up, low, different to continue that?
That's done for the characters because each one has a different timbre to their voice. So that's
you
the
use
difference.
what,
Yeah.
about 8 characters?
There's actually about 8 different puppets and about 12 characters. Some are not seen, as you know from the show.
That's right.
They're invisible voices.
But you have this funny monkey.
Oh, Darwin. Isn't he wonderful? Yeah, he's
Great,
so much fun.
and he loves the audience.
Yes, he does.
But,
He does.
but you do, it seemed to me that was a change in your voice so that you can continue without stopping, because you don't stop.
No, that's the one thing about a one-man show. If you're a ventriloquist, you don't get a time to rest. You know, when you're listening, you're talking. So.
Who else did you have? You had this funny tennis ball that rolled along.
Oh, Spalding. Yeah, Spalding is
Spalding,
great. Yeah.
excuse me.
Spalding's actually, people always ask me, how do you come up with characters? I think Spalding we actually created for this show.
Oh, you did?
It was a kind of an idea that I was playing with, and we found the perfect place and the perfect spot for him to be.
But you know what I thought of? Because I was sitting back a little bit. Mr. Wenceslas.
Oh, yeah, Senor
He
Wenceslas.
reminded Senor Wenceslas.
Well, he did his hand, and that's very much the same.
The
yeah,
Spalding.
very much the same.
Well, who else is there?
Well, there's some people that didn't make the cut, and I got to show you that this is now this is the reason it didn't make the cut because this is very, very small. I don't know if Ahmad can pull into this, but this, of course, is a familiar character, but it's George. Hi, George.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
Is everything good?
Yeah, good for you.
Would you like to do a song for Joan?
I would.
Would you?
I'm in the money.
Oh, it's so
I'm in the money. I got a lot of
Yeah, thank you.
I'm in the money.
No, you're done. Sometimes you can't stop them.
He just keeps moving his mouth.
That's it. That's it.
You have a character on stage, too, that opens his mouth. I mean, it's a piece, it's like a blackboard.
Oh, you're talking about Arthur Drew. Yes, yes.
Arthur Drew.
Arthur Drew, yeah.
Drew, I didn't get it.
He is Drew. Well, see, you have to come back twice to see all the puns we have.
Right.
But, yeah, Arthur Drew is a character that I actually draw on stage, and he comes to life. So.
I know, that's so fabulous. So do you know how to do magic?
I tried to do magic when I was a kid, and I'm fascinated by magic, but I never had the capacity for it. I decided that ventriloquism was my thing.
What about poetry? You call yourself a poet as well.
Well, I have written poetry ever since I was in junior high, and I now have a book of poetry that someday will come out. I don't know.
And then did you ever do stand-up, just plain stand-up without being a ventriloquist, because you have a stature on stage?
Well, I did to a degree. To get from character to character, sometimes I did stand up in between. I never did
Shows.
a single where I just went out and did stand up, but that was just never my thing. But I acted without doing ventriloquism, so I would be in plays and things like that. So I was used to being on my own, I guess, a little bit.
Well, I think the two and Jay Johnson, two and only, is fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Really
We're having a great
enjoyed
time. And if people can find the Brentwood Theater.
Oh, they can. It's like
Good.
the Wadsworth,
Sure.
the Brentwood. You just
Sure.
keep going down Wilshire and it's there.
Yeah.
But then when it's on Broadway, it's simple to find.
That's right. Helen Hayes Theater will be there.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for watching this part of the Joan Quinn Profiles. We'll be right back with Kenneth Alan Williams. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Kenneth Alan Williams was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. He earned a Bachelor of Arts from Drake University in Iowa with a minor in theater. I guess you always were headed for the theater.
Yeah, you know, from an early age. Started when I was just a little kid and doing school plays and was a theater major when I started school, but then the department was kind of funky, and so I flipped over to the English department.
Did it run in your family?
Not really, although, I mean, my mother's kind of a ham. And
Not like that. Doesn't count.
Okay, no, I didn't really have showbiz blood. Although my grandfather actually owned a silent movie theater in Chicago before the Depression.
Oh, that
and
counts.
Yeah, so there's that kind of theater.
That really
Yeah.
counts. But here you are in Chicago, and you had East Coast, West Coast. How'd you decide to come out here?
Well, my wife back 10 years ago got a job, television series, and so we were actually dating at that time, and so she came out, and we kind of were testing the waters to see if we should do this together or how it would work out, and so I, after a couple more months in Chicago and doing a few plays, then I decided I'd come out and join her, and we've been here ever since.
Oh, so that's why you came to the West Coast. In
Yeah.
Chicago, you did do a lot of theater.
Yes.
And there's so much theater. It's shocking.
It is. In fact, I think almost we're in Chicago, it's like we're our own worst enemy to some degree because there's so many storefront theaters that they kind of eat away at each other's audience.
And you don't really even, you don't know about it because one doesn't take, well, Steppenwolf and,
Well, the big ones,
yeah, they kind of come to the top.
Mm-hmm.
But the small ones, I guess, what?
Well,
They feed what?
Well, there's, you know what, there is an audience base in Chicago that loves the off the beaten track stuff, that loves that kind of artistic, edgier kind of theater.
So that works there.
Yeah, so it's supported that way.
And then when you actually came here to LA, you got a lot of guest spots on Dharma and Greg and Will and Grace and Chicago Hope. What kind of characters were you playing?
Well, that's a great question because it used to drive my agent nuts because she was like, I can tell we've got something here. I just don't know where to put you.
Kenny, where are you?
Right, where are you? Knock, knock, knock. Come on out. No, well, on ER I played a neurosurgical resident, so I can throw on glasses and be sort of the, you've got bifrontal intraparenchymal edema.
So you did have a recurring role on that. The other ones were guest shots. So, but what were you? Were you a lawyer? No.
I've done, owner of a .com business. I've done actually a rocket scientist, but on the same show, this was VIP with Pamela Anderson, and then I also did a used car salesman on another
that's good.
episode.
I like that one.
I feel like that's range. If you've got used car salesman and rocket scientist, then
I like that.
yeah, and that's fun for actors.
And you've done a lot of independent films
I have.
as well. Do you like that?
Yeah, in fact, I just made a very interesting film this last summer called The Eyes of Scott Robbins.
Oh.
And it's about a man who gets pancreatic cancer. And he's a documentary filmmaker. This is my character, and I decide to document my whole journey through my diagnosis and treatment and telling my family. So I've got this camera lens about the size of a pen mounted on my glasses. So most of the film you see through my perspective of how it's going. So it's sort of faux documentary, but it's
based on a real story?
No, the writer-director is just, he had a grandparent who passed away from cancer. So he's always been interested in the subject, but it's not a real-life thing.
Well, that was kind of creepy, hard.
Well, it was kind of creepy hard, but it also was great, too, because I wasn't just acting. I was also filmmaking, because it was depending on where my head went, that's what the camera sees. And then there would be other parts of the film that would shoot me too, as I'm talking to the lens or other people.
Sounds really good.
Yeah.
Sounds.
I think it's something that'll play well in festivals, and hopefully,
Yeah.
if somebody gets interested in it, then we maybe could go further.
It does sound good. And besides TV and independent films and films, you've done a lot of stage work. You toured with Ed Asner.
Just
and
recently.
What was that? Great?
The Great Tennessee
See.
Monkey Trial. It was. It's the Scopes Monkey Trial from 1925, where John Scopes was a high school teacher who was actually junior high school, was teaching evolution, and the state of Tennessee passed a law saying it was illegal to do that, and instead you should teach the creation from this Bible.
What did you play?
I played Clarence Darrow's assistant, Arthur Hayes. So I played Mike Farrell played two actors. John Delancey played Darrow for half the tour, and
So you got to play with
yeah,
two
with two
people.
different guys. We switched kind of midway, and then Mike Farrell played Darrow after that.
How did that feel?
What?
The dynamic, does it change?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It actually keeps you on your toes because,
that's good.
because actors have a tendency to, if we're not careful, we can get sort of packaged into our routine so much. And so when you throw in a new character or a new energy, a new actor, then all sorts of things can happen.
Well, you're very animated, and right now, and we're talking, we're real excited, but you've done a lot of radio.
Well, radio plays.
Yeah, radio plays.
Right, yeah.
So your face doesn't show. You have to do it all with your
It's
voice.
true, with your voice. And I'm basically a character actor when it comes to
for those?
when you almost have to exaggerate a little bit because the listener has to picture it in their mind, so you have to help them along.
That's what I was going to ask you about accents. Is that a forte of yours?
I would say, yeah. I mean, if you're Paul Drucker and you live in New York City, then you got to talk like this. When somebody comes into your house and you want to talk about things that are horrible, you can do that, and then you can also be British, like I'm doing in the play.
Mr. Colpert.
Mr. Colpert.
Yes, I thought you actually were British.
Did you?
asked, Yes.
Oh, that's a great compliment. Thank you.
I did. I said, did he come from the cast in London?
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
well, you were
thanks.
such a nerd.
Yes, I know.
And to look at you now and then to see you on stage in this play with your glasses and even your hair was kind of nerdy.
Yep.
And your stance, your posture.
Well,
Was that the direction of Scott Cummins?
I think everything's sort of a hybrid. We all collaborated on finding that character. So when it's interesting though when you do take on a dialect, there is something that infuses your body with that's it's otherworldly. It's different. You're out of yourself.
But that's what is supposed to happen to convince the people, right, who are watching you. I mean, you take on that persona, so as an actor, you know how to do all of that.
And I'm more comfortable in that type of acting as opposed to play. Just be yourself and do your thing. I get, that's not, if I have something to latch onto, a dialect or a age or something that's sort of from the outside in, it helps me.
We talked about your director, Scott Cummins, for Mr. Colpert.
Yeah,
but
terrible man.
But you also directed him in
did.
Lobby Hero.
Right.
How does that switch off? Was he a good actor? Was he a good director? Were you a good actor? Were you a good director?
Scott is a double threat. I have heard him sing, so I guess you could say he's a triple threat. No, he's a fabulous actor, a really wonderful actor, and he played the same part that he did for me in Lobby Hero. He originated in the Chicago production.
Oh, so
when he came to our show, he had done this role before, and in fact, I had new suggestions for ways he could incorporate, because it's a new cast, a new energy, a new thing.
Well, what about style-wise? Your style as opposed to his style. He's directing you and Mr. Colpert.
We're very different, but we all ultimately speak the same language in the theater, and that's just telling a good story. And how you get from one point to the other doesn't matter so much.
Well, tell us this story.
Of Mr. Colpert?
Of the human condition.
Oh.
It is Mr. Colpert, yeah, at the Odyssey Theater.
Well, it's basically a story of this couple, and we're sort of a neutral European environment somewhere. We don't say specifically where, but we're a couple, my girlfriend and I, have another couple over for dinner, and there's an enormous trunk in the middle of the living room, and there may or may not be a murdered co-worker of the girls in that trunk. And it kind of goes from there, and it turns into...
it goes funny, mean,
right.
And I think the way you're moved around the stage, there's just so much like choreography going on. Blood, screaming,
Right.
pizza man,
Right.
all this stuff going on. And you never leave the stage.
No, we don't.
How do you do that? I mean,
well, that's
it
not
really-
true. Technically, I do slip out for about 60 seconds.
What do you do? Oh yeah, you go behind the door.
I
but
go to the
that's-
restroom, but
yeah.
it's just a thing.
But we know you're still there.
Oh yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, it is a wild ride. It's a roller coaster, and we got this fabulous review in the LA Times. It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
critics' pick, and they were, we're going all the way till March 19th, so we're hoping to continue to get good audiences. But it's the kind of show that it spirits people, because it's not your typical
Right.
sit around and talk about. Almost like tired television plots brought to the stage, which you see a lot
yeah.
here.
They call it black comedy, but I mean, it's really black.
This is
The idea is really black.
This is jet black, deep dark
Isn't
black,
it?
black hole black.
Exactly. And when I was thinking about it, it's like what everyone on stage is cutting out everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
They're only thinking about themselves in reaction.
In the actors?
Yeah, the actors. They're only thinking about themselves in relation to the other people, how they feel, what they're doing,
Right.
and how they're trying to provoke the other person.
Everybody has their own little agenda.
Yeah,
that's very
isn't that
clear.
right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But they're all living in the same world. That's the weird thing. And I think a credit to
that's
Scott's direction is that you've kind of got these four tops that are sort of spinning around each other, but we're all in this same place together, and it works. It kind of works cohesively that way.
I didn't think about it in that
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
Well, we have to leave, but
Okay.
I know you teach the Viola Spolin technique.
Yes, I
What
do.
is that?
Oh, she's like the mother of improvisation for the theater. Not like stand-up, funny joke. She's about creating space objects and telling story in the moment. And so her son Paul Sills founded Second City in Chicago.
Oh, of course.
And so that's an old Chicago long tradition of improvisation.
And
And so
so-
I teach her
Technique?
Yeah, kind of. Her.
Style?
Her manifesto is
Oh, I
called The
see.
Improvisation for the Theater, and that's my
Where do you
book.
teach it?
I've taught at UCLA, and I've taught in workshops in Chicago and all over the place.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Joan. This
Kenny.
is great. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time.